Okay, this is a subcommittee meeting of the School Improvement and Performance Management Subcommittee, chaired by myself, Dominic Lay, and Jackie Doherty as members. And we are going to discuss school zoning plans at the start of this meeting, and then move on to the lunch programs and have our Aramark representative discuss them with us. So I'd like to turn the meeting over to the superintendent about the Lowell Public School demographics.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I guess I need to have a roll call first.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have a roll
Chairperson
call.
Bahu,
Yes, here.
Ms. Doherty,
Here.
Mr. Lay.
Yeah.
3 present.
Thank you, Mr. Bahu and school committee members. Different school committee members and community members as well over the years have asked us to look at our zoning and equitable enrollments and so forth. I know, Ms. Doherty, that you were one. I'm prepared to do all the talking here, but I want to give you an opportunity if you'd like to say, from your perspective, we probably share the same perspective, but why, if you care to, I can go right ahead, but do you want to say why you think we should be looking at enrollment?
Well, I think you mean looking at
Zoning,
zoning.
yes.
I think we can do it more efficiently than we've been doing our transportation and by having more flexibility. But I have to say, like, the ground rule, and I'll just speak for myself, is that we want to keep as much diversity as we can in our schools, maybe even do a better job with diversity. As your breakdown shows, we're not quite there as much as we could be, perhaps. Another value for me is we need to figure out a way to offer families that no matter what neighborhood you're in, you have choices and they're similar choices. And I know from my past experience, when we've looked at this issue, one of the biggest challenges in terms of trying to be more efficient in our bus routes has been the K-8 schools being citywide.
Right.
Because then you can have somebody at the end of Tingsboro going all the way to the other end of this Lowell. And I think, I don't have an answer for that, but if we were to say, I don't have an answer for that. Because I do think that we want to be able to provide options for people that no matter what your neighborhood is, you have similar options. But
Okay.
those would be values for me to keep it diverse. And
Okay, so I'll pick up on that if you don't mind. Ramsey, do you mind displaying the slides, please? The slides that are in front of you. And these were part of an entry plan findings report that I made to the school committee in the spring. Right? And so one of the findings had to do with the enrollment at Lowell Public Schools. And one of the slides is you have in front of your school committee members in color. So let's see if we can pull up that. And I may ask you to click through, or if you, yeah. So on that first slide, if you look at the top in the blue band, you can see our enrollment has been reasonably steady in the 14,000 range. We are currently considerably above that.
right, I noticed that.
So that's even that 2023, 2024 is from October 1 of last school year. We're up in the 15, close to 16 now, right? So we have increased, but the demographics or the breakdown by race of those different of our population has shifted. The white population slightly decreasing over the last 6 years, Hispanic population slightly and more than slightly increasing. African American population staying very steady in proportion of Lowell's public schools student body, and the Asian population is not declining, but the proportion is slightly lower. Okay, and if we could have the next slide, please. You notice that one of the great challenges for Lowell Public Schools is that students come in right through the school year. And so in the past couple of years, these are the numbers of entries and withdrawals between October and March. And so if you're wondering as a teacher, am I making progress with the students in my classroom? And you give them an assessment, every 6 weeks or so to gauge the progress. Well, matter of fact, some of the students are different each time. And maybe in some schools more than others. Can we have the next slide?
So hold on, so what would the net be? That would be the amount
And
of,
that means the increase or decrease. So In the 2022-23 school year, between October and March, 849 students came in, 755 left. So overall, we gained 94 new students during that time. Last school year, during that same time, we gained 197 new students during that time.
So within that 6-month period, we gained some, we lost others,
The overall was an increase, yeah.
and then there's a net number. Go ahead, Ms. Doherty.
That would not reflect students who just transferred internally.
Correct.
So someone could move from one neighborhood to another in Lowell, it wouldn't be in there. They
That's a
just
good
changed
point.
schools.
That's a very good point.
Because I think that transient, obviously, it does impact your learning, it impacts the teaching,
Sure, moving from one school to another.
right, in the middle of the year.
Mhm.
So we don't have that number, that would be a different number.
Very good point. Ramsey, can we have the next slide, please? And if you don't mind, let's move past this for now. At least we can come back to it if you wish. So this slide is that there are further slides, and there are many more, and they're in the entry plan findings. I can provide the committee with them if you wish. I think this slide is the last one we need to refer to in terms of zoning. So, and you can choose any schools you want, but these are two middle schools in Lowell. If you look at the top in blue, their populations, one has a few more students than the other, not so terribly different, they're both in the 600s. If you look at the L population, English language learners, we now refer to as MLs. Robinson School has 29%, and it has increased since then. Daly School, the proportion of students that are multilingual learners is 12%.
So more than twice.
If you look at the homeless population, at the Robinson School last year was 15%, at the Daly 9%. One of the reasons that that's important, the homeless population is a high needs group of
Right,
students, right?
right.
And that's got to do with academics, it's got to do with attendance, it's to do with mental health issues, social and emotional difficulties and so forth.
So let me ask, what classifies a student as homeless?
They don't have a permanent address. There's a code for it, and we follow the McKinney-Vento law.
Mhm.
So students who are
So if they move from one home to another in the course of 2 months and changing addresses,
they may be living in a shelter. They may be what we call doubled up. It may be one family living with a friend family while they're sometimes living on couches or living in a shelter,
Mhm.
or simply don't have their own
don't
home.
have
They don't have
the.
a permanent address, but I asked.
So while we at that, for example, if Fred have, like, if Dominic has a roommate and he has a kid, the roommate has a kid who goes to school, is that kid considered homeless?
I don't have the technical definition with me right now, but yeah.
I think it has to do with a permanent address.
Okay,
Like if you're staying at a motel, because you don't have a permanent address, you would be considered homeless.
okay.
My question
People
is,
double up too.
how difficult would it be to have a category on poverty? Just general poverty.
So
Do we have that information?
We do. The Department of Education has a category called economically disadvantaged or economic. I think that's what the actual term is.
Because I think that's an important factor as well.
It is. In terms of, you notice, for example, the Robinson School, if we look at the Latino population, almost half, the Daily relatively few. On the other hand, if you look at the Asian population, the Robinson, very few, 9%. Where's that, right? So these things make a difference. And then finally, if you look at that last line, mid-year entries. So we call this churn, right? So the Robinson School took on 72 new students between October and March. The Daily took in 12. There's one big reason for that, and it's something we should tackle as part of our rezoning consideration. If the school year begins with, say, the Daily School full, and the Robinson School has, not their classrooms are not full. When new students come to Lowell, they can't be sent to a school that's full already, and so so we need to tackle that in our rezoning. So I'm not going to go on with any further data. We can look at other data that the committee would like, but the point was just to cue up the conversation about we believe that this data, and other reasons that committee members and other community members have brought to us in the past, commit us to or demand of us that we look at our zoning plans. We have 2 zones. Might we do better if we had 3? Might we deal with the equities here, the inequities, and make it a fairer system in Lowell? That's it. Might we also save on transportation, right? So we think it's time to look at that, and I want to be transparent with the committee that if we are to look at it, these are the reasons, and this is where we're going.
Sure.
I just thought of something else too that I think has been uppermost in people's mind. As much as possible, we want children to be able to go to their neighborhood school. Because that way you can walk to school, and you're going to school with people who live in your area, you could be friends and do stuff after school. And that might be why you have, let's say the example you just gave with the daily, 50% Asian, and you had 9% Asian at the Robinson, because there's more Asians in that neighborhood. Would you
That's
say
right. But so this is exactly a good reason to consult the committee, because, the committee, this subcommittee, and possibly if we
full committee,
we may be charged with moving forward with this kind of project or not. And if we are to go forward with it, we may be given certain parameters, and that's what we're looking for.
Right.
We don't want to come back with a model that includes more neighborhood schools, only to find out that's not something the committee is interested in. So that we're doing this up front so we can get parameters from you. I want to take a lot more questions, have a lot more discussion. If I could, though, move across and talk to Dr. Jeff Todd, has been a teacher, a consultant, a coach in Lowell, including at the Daily School, and so I'm very familiar with him and his brilliance in various matters, including with data. And so I reached out to him to have a conversation about how involved this work might be, what possible configurations could we look at, and what kind of questions would we need to resolve with the committee before we even begin. I'd like to give Dr. Todd an opportunity to speak.
Sure, great, thanks. Nice to be with you all. Thanks for having me. I think I did my first demographic analysis of Lowell Public Schools in 1994. I was a grad student, a master's student at UMass Lowell, and becoming certified to teach. And a student taught at Lowell High School, and one of the things we had to do was get out and do an analysis, and I was very interested to see how Lowell's races broke out and how socioeconomic status, and that was right at the beginning of MCAS. So it was the first time the state was actually providing the data, and it was pretty accessible. So I've enjoyed always looking and watching at Lowell, appreciating its diversity, seeing how it plays out. Lowell's done a great job. I've worked in Lawrence, not to put it down at all, but when you go on the playground in Lawrence, people speak Spanish.
Right.
But when you go on the playground in Lowell, students who speak other languages actually have to speak English, because there's so many people from different communities that English becomes the common language, and it helps students' English language development. So diversity has always been really important. So I was excited to take a look at this along with Liam and some of the other staff here at the office. And there are a few issues. I think, Ms. Doherty, you've kind of identified one of the big issues here is K-8 schools that affect the assignment process. I would say we actually have 3 zones. You have a zone 1, zone 2, and then you have a citywide zone, essentially, right?
Right.
It is almost a 3-zone system as it currently stands. And that 3rd zone, both zones cross the river, so students are being bused across the river a lot.
Right.
And then the citywide schools, as you said, you can live in Tingsboro and end up at the Pine, right? And so you can look at some of these things. So the first thing I did is I thought, what would it look like if every student went to the school closest to their home? And we filled up each school based on how close they were to their home. And what you end up is with really racially imbalanced schools. And that's not going to be something that's going to be popular or according to what society would want you to do. And so the question is, how many zones should you have? And if we're talking somewhere between, we're going to count K-8 schools as middle schools, there's 10. And if you count just middle schools, there's 7. So how many groups can you divide those into? And the answer is 3. You can't make 4 zones. You can't make 5 zones because then there's not enough middle schools to handle the flow from the elementary schools that go into those schools. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we kind of look, could we do 5 zones? That was our first effort, 2 north of the river, 3 south of the river, the Highlands, Belvedere and Central Core, those 5 zones, and it just didn't work because the schools weren't in the right places to feed students within those neighborhoods. There's not enough middle schools in the Highlands, right? There's just 1, the Daily, right? So, and there's a lot in the Belvedere area that if you start counting up the Sullivan, the Pine, if it's a middle school,
Riley.
the Riley, no, the Riley's
That's
not
an
middle school.
elementary,
That's
the
an elementary,
Butler.
the Butler, and then the STEM, I want to say the Rogers, right?
Right.
Like those, there's so many middle schools over there that there's not enough elementary schools to feed those schools and keep them full if you start to divide them up. So 3 zones was kind of what it looked like, and a map of that looks like everybody north of the river, and then some line down the middle of the city, east and west. And that was kind of what we came up with. Some of the issues that have to be faced, though, there are this question about citywide schools. There is no citywide school. Well, do you want citywide schools? Do you want to keep moving students across the line? If you have K-8 schools, there's not one north of the river. And if you want to keep things equitable, so every student can go to a K-8 school, you got a problem because if no one crosses the river, say because that's where the zone is, there's no K-8 school there. And there would be some feeling of unfairness and inequality that you can't go to K-8 school. So that means you have citywide schools again. So the one proposal would be to keep those and understand that that's just an expense of having the system like that. Could put a school up there, K-8 school up there, figure out how to do it. I don't know. There's 4 elementaries and 2 middle schools. Can you figure out how to get a K-8 school out of that? I don't know. Or just eliminate K-8 schools and just go with elementary and middle schools. So those are some of I'd say on the citywide issue that the story brought up, that's kind of the frame that some of the decisions that the community school committee would want to consider. You mentioned someone, I think, so you mentioned that about neighbors, people want this to have a neighborhood school. Well, some of the information we get through people downstairs in the parent information center is that actually they don't want neighborhood schools, they don't want their children to walk. And so they prefer many times, it's an assumption that many people have, but sometimes people want their children driven to school. And so people will want a school that's further away so they qualify for transportation. So, so this is not, as you think about this, what many parents want, I don't want to say every parent wants, is their child to be able to get taken to school and come back.
So maybe a work issue.
It may be a work issue, it's not a
Safety.
judgment issue, I'm just saying, this is as
Safety.
we ask around, what are some of the impediments to trying to reduce transportation or get students into more local schools? Is that parents want their students on a bus to a school and coming back so they don't have to walk, whether they don't feel safe with their kids walking, or like it could be any number of things about that. Yeah.
Excuse me, but as the requirements for qualifying for school buses increase the amount of walking, for middle schools, at the Daily, we took on more and more bus students from Pawtucketville near the Wang. And the Wang took on more and more students from the Highlands near the Daily.
Right.
Because the parents wanted them to qualify for busing.
So they picked a school that was further away.
Within the zone that crosses the river.
Right.
So these are some of the things that come up that the committee has to grapple with. Also, Mr. Skinner mentioned this, the feeder system is also a challenge. And I will say for the Daily, I'm intimately aware of the Daily and its feeder system and helping put classes together there. Is that the Morey and the Bartlett, the Morey and the Bailey feed the Daily. And if you take the number of students at the Maury and you take the number of students at the Bailey and you add them together, it's more than the capacity of the Daily. So these structural things mean no matter what you do, on day one, the Daily school is full and people stay there. They don't move on. And they want to stay there, right? So that
Everybody wants to go to the daily.
they not, yeah, other people like some of the other schools, but having worked there, there is less churn there. People get there, they stay there. And one of the reasons is because there's how many classes per grade at the more?
Strand.
Oh, so,
Strand. There's four.
4, right?
4 times 20
Right.
is 80. And 4 times 20 at the Bailey is 80. So there's 160 students, right? At 20 per class, ideal, coming to the Daily. And how much space is at the Daily?
6.
Six times 25.
Yeah.
Is 150. So there's already 10 more students coming in than the ideal capacity. Right, so there are some structural things, as Mr. Skinner alluded to, that have to be addressed if you want to get equity and be able to do this. And people are very committed to this feeder pattern. So that's one of the things you have to take on, sir.
Yeah, thank you. One of the factors that you get into when you start looking at this is that there are some things that just might not be possible, right? But I think that doesn't mean you can't improve what we have, right? And so we probably should look at it anyway, is my attitude, and look at the feeder patterns and look at the, and you may be able to, if nothing else, reduce transportation costs. You might be able to, and we have to, I would say, be able to make our schools more equitable. You can't continue to give advantage to one school and or some schools and then disadvantage other schools. It's one of the things I've learned in the last number of years that, there's some really good work going on in schools that are at a disadvantage, but we've not given them enough help by making them more equal with the others that, so I think there are impediments and there are maybe some logistical issues that we can't overcome, but we should look at it anyway and come back to the committee with some suggestions.
Mr. Lay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, from what I know from the parents, I think there are 3 schools, 3 middle schools that every parents are fighting to get into. One is the Pine Arts, the other one is the Daily, and the other one is Wang. So, somehow those 3 middle schools people always want to get into. Robinson, not so much. Sucklows are good, but not so much. The Butler, same thing. So if you consider zoning, I would think those are the anchor schools that somehow you look at those 3 schools and the rest is just less important. So anyway, when we look at the difference between, say, the Robinson and the Daily, you see that Asian is 9% versus 50, and another one is BL 29% versus 12. Is that because of students who live near that neighborhood go to that school? Is there any way we can find how many students that go to that school that actually live near that school? Can we
Yeah,
find that?
it's doable. I actually think that within the, what's that, the little thing they use for placement? It's one of the choices when you log into Aspen. It shows a map of the city, and you can look at where people live by school.
It's not hard to do,
If it could
but I
be
think
that,
to
I
your
think that-
point that it's not like, one of the reasons that a large proportion of daily school students are Asian, so a lot of Asian students live in the Highlands,
Yeah,
right? And so that again, we may be able to make this better. You won't be able to address every issue, but you certainly could, I think, make it better. Well, and if nothing else, if we can't address all of the imbalances, I really believe we ought to be able to address the churn problem, where some schools take on new students right through
More,
the year.
Mhm.
And yeah, we should be able to address that.
Mr. Todd, let me ask. The amount of students that get bused to the daily, is that as high proportion as they do to the Robinson or to the Butler?
So I didn't really look at whether students have a bus pass or not, or
Okay.
whether they get transportation, so I wouldn't be able to answer that. You may be able to answer that more experientially.
Sure, because the Asian population is very high in the Highlands,
That's right.
but I know a lot of the people, that you don't live within that mile, 1.25 miles to qualify for a bus. So the parents, and we know what it looks like over at the Bailey School, daily school, when school's getting in and getting out, it's very highly populated with vehicles.
That's right.
Students are getting dropped off. So it's just sort of something to consider.
We all, if I could,
Sure, please.
we also set up parameters a while ago that weighted. So parents come in and make a request, this is my first choice, this is my second choice. And if the first choice was the neighborhood school, that was a preferential thing. We tried to give you your neighborhood school first, if you asked for that. And once you get into that school, if you have younger children, they get preference to be
Mhm.
at that school. I mean, these were decisions that were really, I mean, obviously, they're impacting the diversity equation. Let's use the daily example, 50% Asian compared to the Robinson 9%. I don't know that we want to back off from that.
That's right. That's
There's some things we have to keep because they make sense for
That's-
families. But the churn piece, I thought we had a plan for that, which was going to be that we're not gonna fill up the daily, that we're gonna leave some spaces.
I had offered that as an idea.
Oh, we didn't actually do
No,
that.
it's not policy, and it's also really difficult to enact, as Dr. Todd said, right? So you might have this idea, we'll leave some space at the daily, but if there are more students feeding into the daily, then they can, you're all.
Then you're already
Yeah.
Yeah,
getting people upset.
Right, it's not getting people upset, it's saying that,
You just can't do it.
You know.
You can't- yeah.
Well,
You can't deny a seat.
which 25 students from the Bailey and the Maury can't go to the Daily?
Right,
Sure. And where are they gonna
In
go?
May from the year before. Right, like it's the end of the school year. Sorry, next year you're not going, what do you think? Right, that's a very hard conversation to have, right?
At any rate,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, committee members, like,
what about a lottery?
well, so the point of, I think, tonight's meeting is to give you a flavor of what we're up against, and to see from you, and then maybe from the full committee. Are you going to charge the superintendent with, in fact, studying this properly and coming back to you with some recommendations? It's a sufficiently complex, very complex matter, would probably require an RFP for to contract with a company to sort of provide some choices for us. And we'd come back to the committee. I think in addition to sharing with you, and so you get a flavor of what's involved, there's also the idea that you might say to us, or your colleagues might say to us before we start, you've got to have citywide schools, or it's okay if you give us an idea that doesn't include, like, there are some parameters like that that might be helpful for us to know. So for example, if the committee said, prioritize reducing transportation costs, that's a helpful guidance for us, right? Or don't prioritize that, right? So we need that kind of guidance that will help us to shape how far we go with the project.
So if we look at, even if, my gut feeling will be prioritize neighborhood schools and diversity. They counteract each other.
Not
You
necessarily.
can't actually do both.
Not necessarily.
Well,
Because-
50%. You look at where, if most of the Hispanic students are in this neighborhood or
Right.
that neighborhood,
Right.
they're going to be,
It's
higher.
possible to divvy up the streets in the city in such a way that that's lessened. But it's also one of the comments you made earlier about looking at the proportion of economically disadvantaged students. Maybe you can't have equal numbers or proportions of Asian and Hispanic students in all the schools, but maybe you could have a fairly equal proportion of economically disadvantaged and not this economically disadvantaged students in schools, even if they're different racial profiles. It's, you could probably sort of balance it in terms of economic disadvantage or homelessness and churn. And some of these other-
So,
Mr. Lay has a question.
So that possible, that's because parents may want to bring their kids to the closest school. I say the Robinson School maybe, though it has more Hispanic population than Asian, that's because in the neighborhood, the parents are mostly Hispanic and they want to bring their kids to the closest school.
Well, that
That
may
could
be,
be-
but
that could
we
be.
bus a lot of students
So
to
that's-
Robinson from everywhere in Lowell. And one of the reasons we do it is because when they come into our system in November and February and right through the year, that's where the seats exist. And we bus them from South Lowell, and we bus them from Lower Highlands and so forth. So, yeah, so it's
And
for various reasons.
I do think, I don't like this like judgment about like, this is a good, everybody wants to go to this school and nobody wants. I don't think that's helpful to look at it that way. I think we want to really look at what's fair in terms of what we offer our students. So to say if we had K-8 schools, but not every neighborhood has an option for one, I wouldn't want that. You know, I wouldn't want to. So I think we really, for me, it's got to be what makes sense for the students and the families and to be fair in the diversity piece.
So if it suits the committee, the subcommittee members here tonight, I would suggest that you or we bring to the full committee a discussion of what we talked about tonight. And then we entertain some feedback from the full committee. And then for you to consider, or your colleagues to consider, a motion to charge the superintendent with actually going forward with a more formal RFP process and so on, or not, as the committee.
Sure.
But I want to at least offer that possibility.
So, yeah, I'll entertain a motion to go ahead and accept the superintendent's report. To go ahead and advance it to the whole school committee so that we can,
Have a fuller discussion. I
have
would
a
make that
full
motion.
discussion. Motion by Ms.
Second.
Doherty, second by Mr. Lay.
Can I offer
Roll
one
call.
other thing?
Yeah, sure.
Do we need a roll call on it?
You don't, no.
Oh, we don't need, okay, good.
In terms of, and I don't remember who it was, I think it was MIT. There was, years ago, there was a school that offered to help us.
MIT. Yeah.
It was MIT. And we didn't have 4 votes around it, and I don't remember why. It was such a minimal cost too. I think they wanted like $1,000 to, you know about the situation?
No, I was a school department employee at the time. I recall the discussion. I believe it was Mr. Dakota who had made the contact, and I was the transportation director.
I mean, clearly, this is a very complex issue. There's not an easy fix for anybody. I think, to your point, we might not be able to do it exactly perfectly the way we want, but can we do it better? We have to try. And for me, it'd be nice if we could save money in transportation. It's not my primary goal, but it would be a nice benefit,
Give students their best opportunity.
right?
Right? Transportation is a big deal.
I would want to be able to say, you're gonna need resources. Is that a place you could maybe reach out to? Is that opportunity passed? That was years ago.
Yes, we can explore that for sure. For sure.
And the one thing that wasn't mentioned is, as far as transportation goes, what's the law say as far as us busing students to charter schools?
So that's a
we
great
can look at
question.
that, and that can be something that we
Great
discuss at the meeting, but I just want to sort of put that on the table so that we can
Right.
have that topic
Understood.
to discuss as well.
And the other piece of that I think is very important to consider. If we offer citywide schools, that opens us up to, I don't know if it's the charter or the private schools. That if we pulled back from citywide schools.
That's correct. Regional becomes regional.
And then we say, okay, we can bus you, but only within
this
your
zone.
zone, and if you wanna go to a school on the other side of the city,
Sure.
you're
You have
responsible
to
for
take
your.
care of your own bus.
So that might be, if we didn't have citywide schools, could we designate a K-8 school for each zone? Even if it's not
That's one of the things I
physically,
was
if we
saying.
say, okay, you're on the wrong side of the bridge for the K-8 school, but that's your K-8 school. So if you want a K-8 school, that's the one you can go to. And if you want to go to the K-8 school that's over, by Belvedere, that's fine.
Something we hadn't, so that's a great idea.
So because part of it for me is you can't offer, again, I go back to the neighborhood idea, right? You live in this neighborhood, so you get this. You live in that neighborhood, you don't get this, right? If we say every neighborhood will have a K-8 school and you designate the K-8 school for each zone, so every zone has a K-8 school. It doesn't have to physically be in the zone. It could be close to it.
Thank you.
Great.
That's an
Thank you,
option.
Dr.
Great.
Todd.
Can I give you one more piece of language? I think that you asked that the variable that is available is low SES in parentheses district certified. So this is a field that is very easily accessible to provide information that's roughly accurate in all these measures where the state says we think this is a low income person and the district says, okay, it's a rough estimate, but there is information on that. And we can split those up among those two.
I think it's a very important category.
Great. Mr. Lay, one last comment before we move on?
Thank you. I just want to give my 2 cents what I feel about this. I do want to save money on transportation, but I also feel that not every schools are the same. If I'm a parent living in one particular neighborhood, happen to be a school that nobody wants to go to. Somehow, I feel that my kids want to go to a different school. As much as we don't want to say that particular school is not as good as one school, but the reality is schools are not the same. And one school has quote unquote better than the program than the other school. Then we limit the choice for the student, for the parents to send the kids to. And I don't want to limit that possibility because as much as we want to save the money, but we don't want to shortchange the education for the kids who want to pursue a better school. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, we'll put that under consideration as part of the overall report. That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, nice to see you.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Mr. Lay.
having me.
Okay. Next part of our meeting is to review and discuss food services provided by Aramark.
Thank you, Mr. Bahu. We have with us Alicia Spooner Gomez, who is a director, is that the right term?
The general manager.
General manager from Armac. And we have an agenda with several items on here. Ms. Crocker, and then I turn it to Ms. Crocker to lead us through.
Thank you. This is in response to a motion by Mr. Lay, who is seeking more information about what we are serving in our school cafeterias. So I did ask Ms. Spooner Gomez if she would provide us with some sample menus so that folks could look them over this evening, and she could kind of take us through how things get decided on those menus and some of the steps that Aramark has taken in recent years to diversify the options on that menu and also increase the quality of the ingredients that were purchased for students. So Ms. Spooner Gomez.
Excellent. Hi. So yeah, I'm Alicia. I am the general manager. I'm also a registered dietitian. So if you don't know, school food service is very regulated. I worked in healthcare for over 15 years and thought that was regulated until I came to school food service. There's a lot of regulations that have to go behind it. Everything that is purchased for school food service is made specifically for school food service, no matter what school you go to. It is made to meet the guidelines. So the prime example that I always say is the Tyson white chicken patty that we serve is all white meat. It's low in sodium. It's got a whole grain crumb topping, and it's baked. So you're not going to get that anywhere else. So that's a prime example of what the difference is between school food service food and what the industry is out at the grocery store. Another good example is the Cheerios we buy are made for school food service. They're not going to have the same sugar content that the grocery store has. And it's really to meet the USDA regulations that are put forward that we have to maintain the integrity of in order to receive free school breakfast and lunch. So I have attached some menus. One thing that we have really worked hard on is really trying to take the menus and make them the same. So a long time ago, I would hear this, the high school got the best menu. Well, we buy the same products for the high school that we do for the Rogers or the Bailey, whatever school it is. So every school does get the same food. We then, in order to really help that and realize like Women's Zip, we're just always talking about the Bailey Daily today, so I'm gonna stick with it. The students at the Bailey and the Daily, they do get the same menu based on regulations. So that was really important to me to do because I would get phone calls and it would be like, well, my child at the Daily got this and my child at the Bailey got that. So really trying to standardize the menu. And so everyone's, making it equitable. Everyone's getting the same items and the same menus. And so that's really something that we've worked hard to do. So that's what's in these menus. We do change them. It's a 5-week cycle, which is pretty standard, but we do monotony breakers. So we run special events, a harvest of the month, which features a local product on top of what our local products are all time. Aramark puts out limited time offers, and those are just fun, different recipes that just to like mix up the menu. So for example, at the end of this month, we're doing chicken katsu. Just really trying to do different things. So yes, we have a core menu that we know meets the regulation, but we're trying to add in those like fun days to really like spice up the menu. And we're always looking for feedback. We do taste tests, cafeteria engagement to see how students are liking the food. We work with Food Corps, and that's something that they're a part of our team that help us drive that. Being like, hey, this is what's on the menu today. What do you think? What would you change? Do you like it? Do you not like it? And that really helps us school-wide and district-wide. So if it's not liked at this school, but liked at that school, we can go back and see training-wise, how is the recipe? Was it executed right? Was there something missing? So we can help them make the best food possible. Any questions so far? Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Lay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to say thank you, Alicia, for writing up this very good report to my motion. And really, my motion was not meant to focus on the negative of Aramark or the food service. You have always been wonderful, very quick in response to what I ask. So, but the students have always been complaining about their food. Understand you serve 2 meals a day to about 15,000 students. Some of them may not be happy, so that's normal. And I even saw it myself that students have complained that they got rotten food or spoiled food. I don't know if you have a system made that the staff should be able to throw away the spoiled food before it reaches the students. I leave that for you to decide. But I saw with my own eyes that when I saw a kid complaining about, oh, the banana is spoiled. It has a dark mark on the peel. I'm sure, I know I've been eating so many bananas. I know inside is still good. But students, sometimes they are exaggerating a little bit, so I understand that as well. So, and I hope that, since you've been so easy to work with, I hope that we can eventually work and pretty much improve the food that we have all the time. Basically, my focus is that if I don't want to serve any particular food to my niece or nephew, then I don't want us to serve that food to the students. Okay. One negative point that I experienced in the past, food's good, tastes good, but the sandwich that I got, I left in my car for 2 days. I ate it, still good. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but I didn't follow it. I just said, hey, it smells good, let me taste it. Still tastes good, but like 2 days, that's so.
I don't recommend that.
Yeah, I didn't follow it, but
From a food safety standpoint.
yeah,
That was not nice.
Yeah.
so I just want you to know.
Yeah.
Want you to know.
Yeah.
So I look at this menu.
Mhm.
It looks wonderful and everything. So I haven't gone out and tried the food yet. I made a promise to Mr. Bahu that we go out and taste the food.
Actually, yes,
and,
we made a pact that we're gonna go to some of the schools
Perfect.
and
try some of the food.
so,
Excellent.
yeah, so. we
On our
hope
own choice, we're not gonna let you know,
That's okay.
right?
Yeah,
It's gonna be
Yep.
taste test.
Yeah,
yeah.
And-
Committee members.
and I really enjoyed, when I'm really happy to see this opportunity areas on the very end of your report that you have this committee and you taste around, go around and taste the food.
Yeah.
That's very nice. So I hope that's help. So pretty much that is what I have in mind. Can we, when you say that we have to, certain food is made specifically just for the schools, does that mean we are limited to buy from the supplier? We cannot go to Cisco or to US Food to get the food from them?
So we do buy from Cisco.
Okay,
Yeah, so, but, you have to buy foods that are, like, it's called a CN label. So it's certified nutrition to serve in K to 12. So when the Department of Education comes and audits our meals,
yeah,
we have to print out that this is certified to serve in the school, so that it meets all the nutritionals for the students. So that's one of the issues, right? So I can't go and buy things from Market Basket, right? Because that's not going to meet the nutritional standards from that we need to based on our menu. So we do have to make sure that we are purchasing from the right vendors. But they all work with them, right? So we buy General Mills, Barilla Pasta, Tyson, we have Cheerios. I'm trying to think some of the other brands, Bush's Jeans. So those manufacturers are making foods for school food service. It's just not going to be the same that you're going to get at the grocery store, right? Because those are going to be made special to make sure that we're meeting the US guidelines.
okay.
And they're getting stricter. I'm a dietitian and some of them is near and dear to my heart because I feel like we should be helping people eat healthy so later on in life they can live a better life. But it's strict and some of the regulations are getting stricter. And there's a lot of movements that we can do to help prevent it, and they've pushed some of them off, but those manufacturers are working already on their product formulation to be able to serve and make products for us to serve. So, the muffins we buy or the chicken patty, the hamburgers, for example, all those things are made specifically. Our pizza dough is whole grain. Our bread is whole grain.
So is Cisco the sole
We
company
do
that
buy
we,
from Cisco, yeah.
no, but are there any other company that we buy the food from?
Absolutely. Cisco, we get our bread from Fantini Bakery. We get our produce from Sid Wainer. And then there's also like government funded products that we have to purchase as well.
Ms. Doherty.
Thank you. So a couple of questions. I thought at one point, the school committee voted that we wanted to use the top tier food, right? So we are
Yes.
still doing that.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
And then I know that we had a motion a while ago about the place for students or families to log complaints. Is that where you said that you've done surveys and not getting responses?
So
Or is that a different place?
that's different. So we still have the Be Heard feedback, which is on it's on the website, and it's an email that goes to Jim Hall, Dr. Hall and I. So that's still in place. I do surveys. Mark put out a survey to all the schools. It really didn't get much traction. It usually doesn't. And then throughout the year, I put up in some middle schools QR codes, like for I'm doing one tomorrow at high school, for example, because we started 2 new programs there I want feedback on. So I'm hoping to get a little feedback from that, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So we try different ways. We do taste tests to get feedback on new menu items or the LTOs that are coming up. Right now we're doing breakfast taste tests to get people excited about breakfast, to try new options that we have, or even just like bring excitement back to some other ones that we were making before.
So, I mean, I guess I'm surprised that you're not getting more feedback from your surveys because it gives students an opportunity to say, why can't we have burritos once in a while,
Yeah.
whatever. But in terms of the be heard, so are you actually getting input from families about,
It's been sporadic.
okay,
think
and then
we-
what happens with that? So you get it
Yeah.
and HR gets it, or,
Yep, and then I usually have to like do an investigation behind it and see what happened. Kind of like walk through the whole steps, and then I provide a report.
so I don't know if that's something that we would want to see, if they're,
I think I did provide them when they happened in the
Okay.
past. Yeah, last year was very few
okay.
that came through. So
Well, it sounds to me like Ms. Doherty is trying to sort of maybe reach out to the parents and let them sort of begin to
Well,
answer surveys.
yeah,
For the children,
right.
because really the children aren't going to provide.
The surveys are one way, and then we also, because we were getting complaints a few years ago, we came up with this idea of this, there's a way, if you're concerned about something or you didn't have a good meal, take a picture, send it in, whatever.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to, I don't remember seeing any
yeah.
feedback, and I think it sounds good, you're not getting a lot of
Right.
complaints.
And if we do, we do have signs up in every kitchen, like what the regulation is, what they have to take. But basically saying, if you're not happy with your meal, the best line of defense would be to go right to your cook. And,
Right,
hey, this isn't good, because
Right.
then they can fix it. Customer service fixing it right on spot is going to be so much easier than me getting an email that night, right?
Right.
And I want to know when someone doesn't get something, and the cooks know that they should contact us when something doesn't go right. But that's the best line of defense, is
Right.
to be like, and I've been at schools where the kid they don't like their choice, and it's okay. Here's something else. So there's always something offered, because I think that customer service really speaks volumes. Just like if you were out in a restaurant, right? This is a service industry, food service. So we want to have the best customer service. And I think training on customer service and really implementing that has also helped. If you see something you don't like, like what's in this chicken, let's bring it to us. So then we can do the research right from that school. It'll be easier for me to find out, what's wrong, and then be able to do the investigation right then and there.
I think it would be, I'm thinking about a third grader. Would a third grader go up to the cafeteria?
Yeah.
Cook and
If
say,
I
I
talk to
didn't
a
like it.
teacher or a monitor, and they've been really great. We develop relationships with those people that work in the cafeterias,
Right.
and so they'll come up and be like, "Well, the student didn't like this, or this is what happened." They drop their meal and really just trying to improve on that.
But I have to say, so I've been around to see the changes. And I remember, because when my kids were little, they wouldn't eat the school lunch except for pizza day, so I was always making lunch. But I remember being at one of the elementary schools, I want to say the Merck one, and that you guys were doing the little cups with fresh cut carrots, fresh cut, and you see the first graders eating the vegetables, eating the banana, and it just, the whole, like, the lunch and breakfast thing has just moved so much in the right direction, as far as I'm concerned, with nutrition. And you put them in front of children, they will eat it. Might be something they're not used to at first, but.
Yeah.
So I
And
think that's been a good
presentation, we
movement.
worked really hard on presentation and training our cooks and our staff on how to present things, and really, we have quarterly meetings, and that's important, is to be every hands-on. This is how you make this recipe. This is what the cup of carrots should look like, and really trying to, it's something we're still continuing to develop and improve on, but it's something that we do continue to do.
Yep, and me too, just watching the evolution over 12 years at a single school. Another thing that I think is important to point out is that, yes, students may be tasting these subtle differences between the products that their parents buy that have a lot more additives and a lot of other stuff that has been made to appeal to that modern palate. But Aramark has also taken steps to add things like sriracha and other toppings. So it's really nice to be able to see kids go through the line and then sort of doctor up their own, but with whether they're using
Like
a
the spice
barbecue
station,
sauce,
yeah.
spice station,
Yeah.
right? And be able to add some of those things so that they can further customize the flavor palette to their preference. And that's something that I saw grow certainly in recent years, that allows kids a little autonomy in terms of making things taste more palatable to them. And so I think that's important also to note that I just hadn't heard it mentioned, but there's a great response from the kids, and they like being able to go over to that bar and top all their things off to to a place that, that is satisfying to them, so they'll actually eat the food. And that's really the most important thing at school, is that kids consume the food so that they can go back into their classrooms after lunch and be prepared for an afternoon full of learning.
Right.
And so I do appreciate the things that I've been able to see in real life, in real time, and the changes in student behavior that have them consuming more of the food and not dumping it and whatnot. So I think it's important to understand that there have been a lot of steps taken to achieve that. And that's really the ultimate goal, is to fed students that are ready for learning in the afternoon.
That's good. I guess I just have a few questions. First, yes, great point. There's a diversified student body in the city.
Yes.
So I eat a lot of leftovers in my house. I sometimes have to talk about what I did yesterday in order to sort of make it a little bit more appealing to me today. I think, let me ask, how are you doing staffing? You know, all of the kitchens across the 20-something schools across the city of Lowell. I mean, that probably could be pretty difficult. Is that fair to say?
Yes. So there is a master roster that was developed years ago, and that's basically, it's based on the number of meals served. So it's meals per labor hour, and that's how that's divided. And so there's a set roster for every school. Yes, one of the challenges is staffing, and being able to fill staff when there's call-outs. So staffing is a challenge. There could be differences in the menu that day, or what's happening on the menu based on the staffing challenges that we are experiencing.
And I know, Mr. Lay is about the quality of the food, it's like, it's good, works well, sits in his car for a couple of days, he's got to go ahead and have a bite of it, we'll all every now and then. I think my question here is, it looks like you serve like up to 5 or 6 lunches per day that, that a student can choose from. And second grade, third grade, fourth grade kids, sometimes they can have a hard time making that decision. Even at a menu at a restaurant, sometimes it's difficult to go ahead and make that decision. And quality is a big deal. So when you have, maybe 5 or 6 items on a menu, that could be difficult for the staff who may not have enough of. So is there, a way to go ahead and reduce the amount of options, yet still be part of the regulations of, USDA to sort of serve our children and not really have the staff have to be, trying to put together shepherd's pie as well as vegetarian nuggets and fish and chips and a pizza platter and chicken Caesar wrap and green beans and carrots. It seems like there's a lot they're expected of the rest of the staff, and then secondly, maybe there's too many options. So is that something to be considered?
Yeah, and so I think that there's 2 hot options and 2 cold options, and a vegetarian option, and that's based on some feedback that we've received. And really, one of the complaints we did receive, that we heard, wasn't a complaint, but something that we heard a lot was about variety. And so this is really just a way to get more variety onto the menu. And so, yes, there's shepherd's pie and fish and chips, and the pizza platter and Caesar wrap. That they're not making 100 of each. You know what I mean? So a lot of places there might be 20 pizza platters made and 15 sandwiches, because they're not going to be as popular as a hot entree. Hot entrees, no matter what, are very popular. So there'll be more of those made. But if it's, I'm trying to think, like, what did we say? Today was like macaroni and cheese. There's 2 types of macaroni and cheese. So there's buffalo chicken. There's a school.
They can blend together, right?
Like spicy, they don't have the buffalo, they just have the macaroni and cheese. So we also ask that we make meals based on, it's called forecasting. So what students have taken in the past. So it's not like we're making 300 and 300 of each. It's like, okay, yesterday was nachos and chicken patty. These students love nachos. So we're going to make more nachos than chicken patties. So you're making the same amount, you're just making like a different split.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think, it may be helpful because it may bring up the quality, and I don't know what the USDA is asking.
They're not asking.
Are they asking for 2 hots and 2 colds?
No, it's a big choice. One choice.
Yeah,
It doesn't
sometimes,
matter.
again, 4th graders are going to have a hard time making a choice when there's 4 or 5 options. And let's be real, they only have about 12 minutes to eat them, unfortunately. So that's that in itself is a problem, because I don't know that even if I don't love what I have, I've got time to talk to the manager and say, hey, listen, I don't love, what I'm eating right now, because Bell went off, so
every minute. So the ones we are monitoring it, but they're also the ones that have to monitor and bring it back to us. The same thing with pizza dough, you know, that pizza dough's traveled from the manufacturer to the warehouse to us, right? And who knows who dropped it? If it's broken, there's usually some, that's going to another school, we can get credits and then we keep moving, you know? Yeah.
Last thing we could ask you, the question of, you know, we've been low for a long time. What do we do with all the extra food?
Good question. So we really base our, you know, right now it's the beginning of school, so we try to figure out attendance and how much food we should make and really try to get a base level. We go back off counts that we did last year at this time, and we really try to gauge how much, so we don't have leftovers. Our whole goal is to really not have leftovers. We can't serve them again. Fruits and vegetables, we have shared